On this week's edition of The Final Dump, the Green Bay Packers are 2-1. Bach is back. The Romeo Doubs era might finally be here. We've got a defense and so much more to get to following a Week 3 win over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's all coming up on The Final Dump.
News dump.
News dump, yay!
News dump.
I mean, that's kind of a loaded question.
It's a landslide!
It's The Final Dump, presented by Game On Wisconsin. And welcome to The Final Dump. Brendan Dworzinski and Matt Freilich here with you on this Monday night, Tuesday morning, or maybe any day of the week if you are listening to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us for another edition of the show. Good vibes all around. The Green Bay Packers 2-1 after a defensive slugfest against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Week 3. But hey, Matt, what is the best part of winning ugly? That's right, it's winning. And that is all that matters in the end. That's essentially what Matt LaFleur said in his press conference on Monday. You know that this team is not going to apologize for any win, especially over a team with a defense like that from Tampa Bay. Good vibes all around. And now, if you're a Packers fan, you can say, hey, we've got a win over a team that isn't smoldering dumpster garbage like the Bears, and we have a win over a really good defense this time.
That's a good way to look at it. I mean, a couple times across the timeline today, I saw some statistics based around Justin Fields, and boy, oh boy, that is a interesting situation they got for the young man. But no, the Packers, victory Monday, love it. We went into the weekend thinking the Bucs were going to be more healthy. That was not the case. We also didn't expect there to be like 4 receivers banged up for the Packers. All that considered, we had them losing the game. I think we predicted the over. So again, we're not getting any dream jobs anytime soon. We're still here for an 8 o'clock special on Monday doing the final dump, just to break everything down and say why we were wrong and what we should know going into the future.
I'm going to have to toot my own horn here because I'm wrong so often. I might as well brag the one time I was right. I did pick a loss, but I said a cover in the under. I did have that correct.
Fair enough.
21-20 is where I had it because I gave the most annoying score prediction possible for under 41.5. But no, we were both pretty close. We thought it would be a close game. It did end up being a close game. Defenses reigned. We're going to talk all about that defense coming up on the show today. We'll get our biggest takeaways from the game, the defense, which was just phenomenal against the Buccaneers. Buccaneers offense also kind of gross, kind of awful, although they were also missing, obviously, their best players in Chris Godwin and Mike Evans outside of their quarterback, Tom Brady. We'll talk about David Bakhtiari coming back, the Romeo Doubs era. It might finally be here, and we'll look ahead to Week 4 against a banged-up Patriots team that's not going to likely have its starting quarterback in Mac Jones. Plus, we'll cap things off with significant to some looking ahead to Week 4. But, Matt, let's start with Week 3. It was at times an ugly game. It was defense-heavy. It was a slog to get through for both offenses, but the Packers, in the end, come away with the 14-12 victory. And, man, it really did come down to the last moments of the game. What was your biggest takeaway from the Packers Week 3 win?
Hanging on to win a game. I guess that's what I'm going to say. Like, they hung on to win a game, and of course they have to throw the graphic down about, second all-time Tom Brady with overtime or fourth quarter comebacks. I have a lot of faith in the Joe Barry defense, but when it comes down to pressing a team at the end, he's now shown again that he's just not really willing to do that. He's going to make you want to maybe make a mistake. The ultimate bend, don't break defensive coordinator. I'd like to see that get fixed at some point, but I would say just coming down to the wire, close game like that, not having to rely on the offense to win a game, truly relying on your defense to make some plays, possibly maybe some negligence to the Megatron or the scoreboard person. We'll go, and there'll be some information that comes out of that on Tuesday. There were some Reddit posts. But I want to hear what Aaron Rodgers has to say on the Pat McAfee segment he does to see what the real answer was. But I would say overall, I was really pleased with the defense. That was one of my biggest takeaways. Special teams, again, Week 2 was not an outlier. This is how the team is going to come playing. And then just guys stepping up across. I mean, really like Yash Nijman stepping in, doing what he does, being in a weird situation of a rotation with Bakhtiari. Keyshawn Nixon having a hell of a game, basically taking the Rasul Douglas cape and putting it on himself, just being thrusted into having to perform. But really, it was just yeah, I would say the defense, just the way they were able to clamp down in the big moments and causing turnovers. Like they were, when you go back and look, like I was halfway through the game, I was like, damn, they're going after the football quite a bit. And I went and watched like the condensed version, like the 10-minute version or 15-minute version on NFL's YouTube page. And truly, like, dude, they were going after the ball all day, trying to get pass breakups, trying to punch the ball out, the old peanut punch. And it was a solid performance from that defense, and still a lot more to be, desired, and a lot more things to tighten up on that defensive end. But sacking Tom Brady is, I think, a feat in itself, because he's just so damn good at getting the ball out, whether or not he's 45 and runs a 5.4 40. Like, I still think it's one of those things where you have to be really, really pleased with the way the defense overall performed.
I think for me, the big thing, and it ties in exactly to what you said there, Matt, is just the fact that the Packers were able to overcome adversity in this game, and adversity in a lot of different ways. The fact that early on they were able to score 2 touchdowns early, should have been 3 really, before Aaron Jones fumbled on the goal line when he got hit by Vita Vea. They were able to move the ball really well with that opening script against the Buccaneers and their incredible defense. And I do want to make sure we give Tampa Bay credit, because that defense is sick. So is the Packers. Packers defense, very good. Looks like it's getting better week after week. That Buccaneers defense is salty. It is nasty. And we saw pretty much after that Jones fumble, the whole offense went to hell for Green Bay, and yet they were still able to pull out a win. So they were able to move the ball against that great defense early on, and that was enough to get everything taken care of and to get the win. Lots of guys banged up and injured. Defensively, for that unit that played so well, they had to do it for most of the game without Jair Alexander, which hopefully everything is going to be okay long-term with Ja. Based on reporting, I believe it was Tom Pelissero of NFL Network, who I saw this from on Monday, said it doesn't seem to be anything super long-term. I believe Matt LaFleur actually brought that up in his press conference. It wasn't just from the reporter, but you know what I'm getting at. You didn't have him for a while, and you mentioned Keyshawn Nixon. That's a great pull. He was definitely one of the performers of the game, stepping in there in a role he is not normally asked to fill, and coming up and making a huge couple of plays throughout the course of the game. I thought other guys up front stepped up defensively in big moments. Offensively, it didn't have Christian Watson. You're not going to have Sammy Watkins long-term. Yes, you did have Romeo Doubs, who we'll get to later, who had his breakout game or something close to a breakout game. Having Lazard be the new safety blanket along with Randall Cobb on some of those quick hitters, some of those RPOs, that was obviously good to see. It's hard to run on that Buccaneers team though, man, and take away something that the Packers really want to do and want to focus on. That makes things hard for your offense. Offensive line, you're rotating your left tackle in and out all game, which worked. I mean, it did to a degree pay off, because the Packers did win and Rodgers didn't get roughed up too badly. But that's not something that I would normally advise. That's not usually conventional wisdom, a smart thing to do. So the fact that there were so many different things that could have gone wrong, so many bad situations to be in, or just unfavorable situations, and to still come out with that win, really, it reminds me of the Cardinals game from last, not necessarily fully in terms of how the game played out, but go back to that game when you didn't have Devontae Adams. In fact, the whole wide receiver room was all torn up. That's what I believe was Juwan Winfrey's first game on the active roster last season, when he said, hey, Juwan, you better be ready to go, because Aaron Rodgers is going to throw to you, because he's got nobody else to throw to. And you had Aaron Rodgers throwing a bunch of little dink and dunk stuff. Yesterday, the first half, he was averaging, under 3 yards per completion through the air. I mean, that's not Aaron Rodgers, but that's what they needed to do, and it worked. And it was very similar to what they had to do against Arizona last year. A lot of short stuff, just try to get guys in space, get the ball out as quickly as possible. That was very reminiscent, all the way down to A, having guys injured all over the place, but B, you get to the end of the game, it took a freak play to win both of them. Arizona last year, we will always remember Russell Douglas, the interception off the total brain fart by Kyler Murray and AJ Green. Awesome memory in recent Packer history. This year, Tom Brady takes a delay of game on a 2-point conversion. And I know it's not all his fault. I know that Cole Beasley, who had been signed like 8 minutes before the game, was lined up in the wrong spot. I know the center, who's a backup, didn't snap the ball, or originally was a backup, I should say, didn't snap the ball on time. But that's a total freak thing. That how in the world does that happen? They didn't have a timeout because they burned all of them going into that 2-point conversion. And then you end up with Devondre Campbell making an incredible play to blow up the 2-point conversion, which the defense, again, may have known exactly what was coming. But that's what it reminded me of when it was over. I thought, damn, we've sort of lived through this before. And I think after seeing adversity in week 1, and it was a disaster, to then come back and face different kinds of adversity in week 3, but to still be able to overcome it and win, I think that's extremely promising for this team's future.
Hell yeah, dude. I totally agree with you. I love, just like you said, the adversity to be able to withstand a potentially like, hey, our offense is going to go completely anemic for almost 2+ quarters, and going up against one of the best football players of all time, and Tom Brady. Uh, the delay game was really strange. I feel like we've seen that in recent, even where he thinks he has a timeout, doesn't. He tried to call a timeout there. I don't know. I couldn't read the lips. I knew he said timeout, and so I thought he had one or tried to get one. But yeah, strange. But at the end of the day, if that delay game goes the other way and they don't get the delay game, or even it's hiked again, at 0, probably a different outcome. I'm gonna just kind of guarantee, because there's a lot of stuff that changed between that play and the next one based off of stuff we're hearing. But overall, hell of a win. It's a W, and it was down in Florida, for God's sakes. They actually get a win down in Tampa Bay, which is huge for me.
Yeah, well, we were just talking on last week's show, right, about how terrible they've been playing games in Florida.
Always.
Hey, you'll happily take that if you're the Packers. Again, you do not apologize for wins in the NFL, and when you play as well as the Packers defense played, I think you deserve credit for that. And let's get to the defense, Matt, and just how well they played in this game. And again, I was extremely impressed by the fact that they got it done without Jair. I know, yes, you can throw in the caveats. Well, they played without him a bunch last year and we're good. Okay, well, that's not necessarily something I would like to repeat, that you don't have your best defensive player out there, or your best defensive back anyway. But true, yes, they have proven they can do that before. And then also, just the fact that they were able to do it for an entire game, and you got a bunch of different guys who stepped up. Devondre Campbell, easily his best game of the first 3 of the season. I don't think there's any question about that. You can see just the unbelievable athlete that he is. You got Adrian Amos making plays. I know he had the pass interference hold penalty at the end of the game, but I thought he played better in the game than we had seen from him through the first couple of weeks, which you and I had talked about. The fact that you got so many different guys contributing, getting pressure. And yeah, I know that the Buccaneers also didn't have any wide receivers. I know they were throwing to Brashad Perriman and Scotty Miller and Cole Beasley, who had just come off the street. But you're still playing against Tom Brady. You're still playing against who we believe, as NFL fans, is a good offensive coordinator and good play caller in Byron Leftwich. And you still were able to come out on top. You held that team to 12 points and 1 touchdown. That is incredible. One, they held them to no first half touchdowns, which the Buccaneers still have not scored a first half touchdown through 3 games, which is outrageous when you consider the weapons they have in general. But to hold them to just 6 points in the first half, or 3 points it was in the first half, I think, and then to hold them, okay, they get the touchdown at the end of the game, but you made the play that really mattered. That was the 2-point conversion. Special teams even recovered an onside kick. So let's throw props to Alan Lazard and the special teams unit as well. I just was so pleased, so impressed, and pleasantly surprised. That's a little strong, but in that same family of just how complete of an effort it was from the defense all game long.
Hell yeah. Like, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, man. Don't forget, like, we talked about how the secondary, like, really, really strong in the front end, but in the number 2 and the number 3 guys, like, shit, like, what are they going to get from them if someone goes down? Well, that happened. We were talking specifically about the safeties at that point, who showed out, I would say, in week 3 way better than they had before. Darnell Savage making some plays, Adrian Amos also having a completely just great game. But then Jair goes down after the first couple of plays, and it's like, okay, Nixon's thrusted in there. And honestly, I'm one of those idiots that, like, I watch the game and I'm like, who is 25? Like, why, like, on a special teams play, sure, I'm going to, like, why is 25? And, like, you just forget that's, like, this is new player they have. And he had a hell of a game. And I think just the secondary alone is, like, I'm super pleased. I feel like the front seven's been, or excuse, I should say the defensive line has been very consistent this whole year, getting edge pressure from Rashawn Gary, Jerron Reed popping off every once in a while, Dean Lowry holding it down, rotating in the Slaytons, the Wyatts of the world. I actually thought Devondre Campbell didn't play that great in the game. He had a ton of tackles, but I felt like in pass coverage, he was just, like, constantly behind a receiver or a tight end or a running back. Now, having watched the condensed version again, there was a play that I thought in real time was like, why the hell is Devondre Campbell trailing? And well, it's Russell Gage. He's trying to cover out of the slot, like, not an ideal cover. So it's like, okay, let's take a step back. Let's not be super critical of him. But, and also it's like, Quay Walker at times looks great. And then at times, like on that last drive where Bucks are getting down the field, like, he's they're not getting synced up as soon as they would like to. It's probably some of that is just a maturation process from him that it's like, okay, I got to get involved with what does it look like a 2-minute defense? Like and there was just stuff out of the backfield that they weren't getting synced up to. But overall, the defense is just like hitting its stride. I would like them, as I said at the top of the show, just to be a little bit more aggressive. I know it's tough to not rush more than 4 against Tom Brady because he's going to find the open man. He did that on the touchdown. They literally brought 5 or 6 guys, and he was able to hit Gage on basically hold it as long as he could to throw it in that second or third window. So that would be my only caveat is like, hey, Joe Barry, I'd like you to be a little bit more aggressive here, but I also understand in a vacuum going up against just Tom Brady, it's like, dude, you can't really bring more guys because we know how fast he gets it out, and he's just so cerebral that he can get it to anyone as soon as he knows where that open dude is. So but again, loving the defense. Like truly, like Jair, sounds like you said that groin. From what I've heard too, I think it was Ryan Wood or Tom Silverstein had put something out saying like, groins are a sensitive, no pun intended, groins are a sensitive area, but it can
relatable.
Exactly. But it can take a little bit of a while to make it just fully, repaired and not a tender issue and playing hurt. Sounded like Jair was pretty optimistic after the game, but you never really know what he's kind of saying or thinking, or if those two things actually align. And at the end of the day, I think he'll be back as soon as possible. But I guess, silver lining to come out that, hey, looks like you'll be back early, and then Nixon, when called upon, can play well. But when we go up against like high-end receivers, not Russell Gage, Brashard Perriman, Scotty Miller, and Cole Beasley, who just got out of the booth, recording his next mixtape, like it's like we would want some guys to be able to sustain against, some better receivers. They're not going to see a tough receiving core for a couple weeks now. Just looking here, like Pats don't have that good of a receiving core. It's a hodgepodge. Giants, Jets, maybe Washington. They got a couple guys right now that are kind of balling up between Dotson, Curtis Samuel, and of course Terry. But hopefully he's healthy by then. And then when they get into the thicker part of the schedule, as it kind of progresses there, you hope he's be back. But I like the defense. I think the defense is solid. They're getting some good pass rush. Preston Smith still playing pretty solid. He was kind of my biggest question mark going in if he could be a consistent pass rusher because we know what we're going to get out of Gary. But thus far, this defense is pretty sweet, and they have more depth than we actually thought.
I want to get to a comment here from our guy, Iowa Joe, on the Game On Wisconsin, where, of course, you can watch us live every Monday at 8 o'clock Central Time. And he says, pass rush wasn't helped by multiple holding calls. And, yeah, I don't like to be, the refs guy, but yeah, I mean, all you have to do is watch the game and say, hey, maybe you should call more than one penalty when Rashawn Gary has the inside of an elbow around his neck. Maybe you should call that a little bit more often. Gil, also our pal Gil on the Game On Wisconsin YouTube mentions Rasul Douglas stepped up pretty well. I think it was Ross Uglum on Twitter on Monday doing his film review, or it might have even been Sunday night when he originally posted it, but said, Rasul is so good on the boundary. He's not nearly the same kind of guy when he's in the slot. He just doesn't quite have that fluidity, that speed, that quick twitch in the slot. But if in a pinch, if Nixon's going to play like he did in this game on Sunday, and you can get really good snaps out of Douglas on the outside, and, I trust that Stokes is going to play well more often than not, that's a good enough group that you can certainly get by for a time. And man, I know we've brought him up a couple of times. You just mentioned him. I just mentioned him too. But Keyshawn Nixon, to have a guy who can just get put in there right away and say, hey, right into the fire, you've got to make plays happen. And to do it, that is absolutely sensational. By the way, before we get past the defense and get on to some offensive notes, let's play a little Remember Some Guys Green Bay Packers edition. Prior to Keyshawn Nixon and after the greatest 25 in Packers history, Dorsey Levens, here are the dudes that wore number 25 for the Packers, okay? Between the years, what would this have been? 2003 and just last year, 2021.
I literally only know one, I think. Ryan Grant. That's it. Everyone else, I have no idea.
That's a good one. That's probably your second best Packer to ever wear 25. I think that's probably pretty easy to say. Again, after Dorsey Levens. Your other ones, can I interest you in James Whitley? Defensive back. Yeah, not a name that came to my mind pretty easily either. No. Marvell Underwood for one season in 2005. No relation to Kerry, unfortunately. Okay. James Nixon, as far as I'm aware, no relation to Keyshawn Nixon, although I might not be right about that. We also had Marwin Evans for 2 years in 16 and 17. Another one that I did not remember Marwin Evans at all. And then most recently it was Will Redmond. And
shout out.
I'm much more happy to see 25 on Keyshawn Nixon than I was on Will Redmond. I think that's pretty fair to say. Let's get to the offense here, Matt, because I think the biggest story from the game going into the game, and this was reported, I want to say on Friday, this really started to bubble up when Bill Huber brought it up. And then it was talked about more and more going into the weekend by some of the national guys. And finally, he was activated. David Bakhtiari is back for the Packers. And he played on a pitch count in this game on Sunday. He was rotating in and out with Yosh Nijman, which, again, conventional wisdom would indicate you probably shouldn't do that because you want continuity on your offensive line. But as our good pal, El Jefe, Jacob Westendorf would say, Packers do pretty much whatever they want on the offensive line, whether we like it or not. They're just going to do what they think is right. And that might change from game to game. It might change snap to snap or drive to drive like it did on Sunday. But it worked, and Bakhtiari held up pretty well. LaFleur said, yeah, he did about what we expected. We'll see what it looks like over the course of the next week. But I don't think you can say enough about how important it is to have that guy out there. And from PFF on Monday, their grades from the weekend, this is absolutely incredible stuff. As typed out by @PackerScribe, Brandon Carwile on Twitter, David Bakhtiari had the highest pass blocking grade of all the Packers from week 3. I mean, this dude has not played meaningful snaps since technically week 18 last year when he only got in a half and got re-injured. He has had all these setbacks. He hasn't played in a real meaningful role since all the way back in 2020. And yet he comes out and immediately he's making a big impact. Could he probably have been better? Sure. I'm sure there are a couple of snaps you could go back and critique, but I've been saying this whole time, I think it's going to take some time. He's probably going to be okay or just good when he comes back. He's not maybe going to be best left tackle in the NFL good like he once was, but he came out and he was balling out immediately. And we've talked about stabilizing this line, and we've talked about continuity and consistency and trust from the quarterback and the guys in front of him. Man, I think I underestimated just how good he would be and how much of an impact he would make as soon as he got back out on, even if it was in a 50% role.
First of all, shout out the producer on the perfect emoji for David Bakhtiari. I don't know why I've never seen that emoji used before for him. Definitely going to be in the repertoire from now on. The fact that he was the number 1 ranked offensive line for the Packers is absolutely incredible. Knowing when they start the game that they're going to rotate him with Nijman is like, they're going to do what? They're going to literally alternate series. Like, holy shit.
It sounds crazy.
Unbelievable. And Rodgers said the same thing. Like, he said in his post game, he was like, thought the idea was a little strange, crazy, whatever term he used. Listen to Andy on the video format of Pack-A-Day today. Also thought the same thing was strange, but it worked. Like, that's literally what the biggest, it freaking worked. And part of it too, which Andy brought up, is like maybe it had to do with weather too. Like, you're going to be down there. It's 94 degrees. We saw the weather taking the toll on a bunch of guys, and not playing for almost 2 years, and to come in and be thrusted in a super high humidity game and just have to withstand that, pretty solid pass rush between Shaq Barrett, I think that young rookie they were talking about, Vita Vea, obviously up the middle. Like, it exceeds our expectations, right? Like, he doesn't really leave the game with injury. I didn't see him limping around all that much. He does have that kind of a weird giraffe-ish walk, so you never know if he's injured or just being, an absolute giraffe. So I would say I was really, really pleased. Like, just the fact that they're able to rotate that in and make it work and have continuity, and that was the shocking part to me. I wasn't sure who would take the short end of the stick with that rotation. I figured Yosh maybe, just because he's like not a vet, but also it's like, how many times has David Bakhtiari done this in his life? Yosh can be called upon at any moment and have to be filled in on either side. So truly, at the end of the day, like, I'm very, very pleased with how Bach performed. Interesting to see now that this is the standard of them rotating series. Will this continue to be a thing as we progress? Are they going to go every 2 series and rotate, or will it be 2-1 David to Yosh? Like, how are they going to sift through that? I think that's going to be super interesting. Barring no setbacks this week, I would imagine there'd be an increase, but awesome to have David back on the field, and just like those relationships that are super important to Aaron Rodgers, the Randall Cobb, the Jordy Nelson, any other guy that he's had these like fun relationships with over his years. It's cool to see them get on the field and chop it up and be boys together, because they don't have any more. You don't know how many more games are left like this, right? Anything can happen at any moment. And it was awesome to see David back, and it really puts this offensive line back into a situation where it's like, okay, now we can put our best 5 out there. We can actually put the best possible dudes out there, and we got guys waiting in the wings, just coming in wherever they need to fill in. And we got that Elton, that ultimate chess piece, that queen on the chessboard that you can move around wherever you need to fill in. You
bring up the good feelings and the friendships, and you never know when it's going to be the end. And not to get overly sad with this, but it makes me think of the picture from, God, was it 2020? It was several years ago, of Rodgers and Bakhtiari sitting on the wall at Lambeau and just talking. They're just wearing, their pants and t-shirts, and they're just chatting. And, that awesome scene that shows 2 really close friends just chopping it up, like you said, or the shot from 2018 where Rodgers and Cobb hugged, and you can see his eyes welling up, and, damn, these dudes are super close friends. Aaron Rodgers is Randall Cobb's kid's godfather. Like, they're obviously super close, and thinking, damn, this is the end of their time together. And then, hey, Randall Cobb ends up back in town. But that's not something that happens all that often. And you kind of have to appreciate the moment while it's there. I know this is kind of going off on a tangent, but it sort of, I think, feels reminiscent of some feelings as a fan that, hey, enjoy these moments while they're here. Don't, lose the forest for the trees, because this is fun. This is exciting. And in a game like this against Tampa Bay, where you could say, oh my God, this offense, what the hell is going on? We won, but it's not the most pleasing win. Look, that's a really good defense. The Packers were super shorthanded on offense, and they still were able to get it done. That is enough for me. And I think, too, with Bakhtiari specifically, when it comes back to actually on the field and the football stuff here, the relationships on the field make a world of difference as well, because you are going to get more trust from your quarterback. Is going to maybe not look off some of the younger guys because he feels like he has more time. He's going to feel more comfortable. And we know, all of us know, everybody who's ever watched a Packers game in the Aaron Rodgers era knows, if you give him enough time, he is going to find someone, and he is going to pick you apart. And you might see a veteran quarterback who has been hit and sacked a bunch this year, feel a little bit more comfortable when he knows, hey, I got the big giraffe over here at left tackle, number 69. He is going to keep me safe. Big E is going to keep me safe side. Myers has had some valleys, but has also had some really high peaks throughout the first 3 weeks of this season. The guard play is not especially good, but it's good enough. I think you're going to see Rodgers get a whole lot more comfortable, and I think that is going to snowball in a positive way into more success for this offense. Running the ball should be more effective with both Dillon and Jones. No, Dillon hasn't churned out a ton of yards and certainly hasn't been super efficient to start the year, but I think that's going to come as this offensive line gets into more of a rhythm, more of groove, and develops more of that chemistry on the field together that they just haven't had in so long. I think the passing game is going to open up. I think some of the slower developing concepts are going to open up. And that continues to build on, okay, well, there's the offensive line. Guess what? At some point, Christian Watson, hopefully soon, is going to be back. That speed being added back into this team, that is a big deal. There are so many things, so many directions where this team can still go and can still develop and still get better. And to see that improvement on the offensive line right away when Bakhtiari gets back in there, I think that's the most encouraging sign yet, even more than getting Elton Jenkins back last week, because hey, the pieces are starting to come together. And against this next stretch of schedule for the Packers, which is not exactly murderer's row. I mean, there's no easy games in the NFL, but this coming week, it's the Patriots, and we're going to talk about the Patriots. Then you've got the Giants, who are playing against the Cowboys right now on Monday Night Football as the show is live. But that's not, I don't know. I mean, they're better for sure, but I don't trust the Giants right now. Why would you trust the Giants right now? They have not really earned the benefit of the doubt at that point. That game is going to be in London. You're home for the Jets, who, again, might be a little bit better this year, but they haven't earned the benefit of the doubt. I'm not shaking in my boots over that game. And then you get the Commanders on October 23rd. These are all winnable games. Packers will be favored in all of them, and rightfully so. You are entering a stretch now over the next month or so, Matt, where I think all these pieces can come together, and suddenly a lot more confidence might be instilled in this entire team, but especially in this offense that I think it's fair to say is a little injection of confidence.
Definitely. It's it's a great time for them to be going through this transition to get Bach back, Jair, figuring out these receivers, who's going to be healthy. Like, I think they're just going to be able to find themselves after having some, like you said, some setbacks with players, setbacks with the way the game's gone, just like fine tuning certain things, whether it be off. I mean, I thought the offense was pretty solid besides being a little anemic. I think it was good flow, maybe getting AJ Dillon involved. Maybe let's get back to a game where we pound the snot out of the ball, like in the Bears game. I think it's a good middle ground they're in. One thing I want to bring up here, and I was just stewing on this as you were talking about the offensive line, the guards. Let's say David Bakhtiari is 100%, takes all the snaps, 60 minutes at left tackle. Any scenario you think Elton moves inside and Yash put at right tackle, or is that just a world that doesn't make sense based off of the trajectory of Elton Jenkins' career?
That's a great question. I still would think personally that Big E is probably your best option at right tackle. I just think he's got the best combination of athleticism, skill, technique, all of that. I think that is probably your best fit there. I think, too, Yash's comfortability is much stronger at left tackle than it is at right tackle. Now, can he play right tackle? Sure. I mean, we have seen it before. I don't know if he is especially comfortable there. I don't know if the coaching staff is necessarily as comfortable there. If you knew you could get equal production out of Yosh Nijman at right tackle as you do at left tackle, I think it's close to a no-brainer that you make that move, because Elgin is good at right tackle. He can be truly great if you kick him inside to guard. And then if you, again, knew you could get that production, you put Yash there at right tackle, and suddenly you're feeling, wow, okay, this is the best five. I just don't know if you can get that same level of production from Yash on the right side, because there are differences in technique and footwork and all of that that can be hard for some guys to manage. It's an interesting question. I think it's a fascinating question. Now, I will say this. Would I be surprised if the Packers tried it at some point? No, I would not be surprised about anything this team does with the offensive line, because it's extremely hard to predict. Unless you start moving Myers to guard or Bakhtiari to guard, pretty much anything else on the table I would say, okay, yeah, no, I wouldn't do that personally, but Adam Stenavich is a whole lot better at this than I am. And I think that's certainly a worthwhile credential for me to step back and say, all right, I trust you. But no, that is an interesting question. And I think a lot of people are asking that right now.
Good. I'm glad I'm not the only one. And I think you're 100% right based off of where Nijman's more accustomed to. And no, it's good. I think it's something good debate. Maybe a little water cooler conversation. Bring up during the week before this next weekend.
One thing I want to get to before we get to Romeo Dobbs, because I do want to touch on our beloved large adult son from the Nevada Wolfpack. Our guy Gil on the Game On Wisconsin YouTube chimes in and asks, with as many competent offensive linemen as we have, do we look to trade one away? My lean is no, and I understand the value in this, because you look at teams that are going to be on the fringes of a playoff run, like Dallas, that has a totally banged up offensive line. Once Dak Prescott gets back, do you try to move someone? I know right after Tyron Smith got hurt, the line of thought was, trade them Yosh Nijman. I remember hearing Robert Mays on the Athletic Football Show say, they should be on the phone with Brian Gutekunst right now. They should be calling to get him right now. If you're the Packers, I don't think you want to do that, just because having that depth is so important. And I know a lot of people are not high on Royce Newman, for example, but having a guy like that, even if you did make a new look offensive line, like you kicked E inside, Newman goes to the bench, still want that guy around, because you know what his level of production is. There's a baseline level of quality there that you know you can live with. So I understand the argument. I just think personally, Matt, I would want to hold on to that depth, because as we have seen in the last 2 years, you never know when you might need it.
Yeah, I like the idea from Gil, and I appreciate the comment. And I think there's always a time to be had to field offers, especially when you have some great depth. But all it takes is one injury here or there, and then where are they left when they traded away someone for some flyer receiver corner? Like, it just doesn't make sense. From that point, I realize it's an abundant of assets they have there, but it doesn't take much for us to be in a situation where we turn into the Buccaneers or the Cowboys, and you got a high profile team, but you don't have an offensive line to keep your quarterback healthy. So definitely something to kick the tires on. I'm sure Gutekunst isn't declining any phone calls and putting it straight to voicemail, but I'm sure he's on the phone for a couple minutes just to be like, oh, no, we're not interested, and click. But still got to keep the transaction wire possibly moving.
Let's get to our large adult son, Romeo Dobbs. We have been on the Dobbs train since the very beginning. Our beloved Mountain West degenerates. This one is for you. Shout out to the Nevada Wolfpack. Dobbs had a really nice game on Sunday, man. It wasn't otherworldly great, but it was good enough that he certainly looked the part in a game in which it was so freaking hard to move the ball. He comes away with 8 catches, 73 yards, has a touchdown. Yeah, he didn't average all that many yards per catch. And you would think at some point the deep shot is going to become a part of his repertoire because he was so good at it at Nevada, catching those moon balls from Carson Strong out in the desert at 11 p.m. Central Time on Saturday nights in week 8. Like, that was such a huge part of his game and such a huge part of Nevada's game while he was in school here. That's going to come. But seeing him get some tough throws at the goal line, seeing some plays down the field. There was that one in-breaking route from the left side of the formation in the second half. Rodgers threw a dart. Dobbs holds on to it, makes a nice gain for a first down. Plays like that, the more we see that, Matt, the more that trust is starting to develop. Has the Romeo Dobbs era, is Romeo Dobbs' season here, or do we need to temper expectations a little bit?
Honestly, I think it's here, and here's why. So, his productivity in the first game that he actually had to be called upon was big. I mean, what did he have? 7 or 8 catches, was relied on very, very early to get this offense moving. And, I mean, there were plays that he had to make. 8 targets, 8 receptions, 73 yards, and a touch. Like, the kid looked great. And the one thing that I really want to pull off of this is, like, it's not like it was the normal cast of characters, a completely healthy Randall Cobb, a Christian Watson out there, a Lazard, maybe he's getting some snap, differentiating from a couple other guys, but like he had to contribute. Like, there wasn't like there's a ton of pressure on him to stand up and, go against a pretty decent secondary in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And he had to literally produce. It wasn't like, he caught like 3 passes on his 4 targets and one was a deep shot. Like, he literally had to produce because he was relied on for a lot of big plays. And like, that's a lot of pressure for a young rookie to be in that we haven't really seen put into that situation yet. And that's when that's when it really comes down to it, is like, okay, yes, you can do it in training camp. Yes, you can do it in practice. Yes, you can do it in a preseason game. But like, when the cards are on the table and the chips are down, and we have guys that are banged up, we're calling up guys off the practice squad, like, we need someone to take over. It's probably not going to be Randall Cobb with an illness. Lazard's still battling the ankle. Like, everyone's looking around. It's like, it's got to be 87. Like, there's no one else. And they truly put him into situations that were great. And they didn't even rely on him at all for the bubble screens or like the RPOs that we had talked about, maybe to get the offense going. Like, they relied on him big plays, like a 21-yard play, the touchdown, like everything. Like, it was, I think he's here to stay. I think he's definitely, at this point, like, he has way more chemistry than Christian Watson does with Rodgers, obviously, right? I don't think that's even a conversation to be had or a debate. So I'm here for Romeo Dobbs season. So y'all know the hashtag. Make sure you're dropping it, and it's support the boy Romeo Dobbs.
And I think, too, our internet connection dropped out there for a moment. But I do think, too, you mentioned Christian Watson. If you can get at least one of these guys on the same page with Rodgers, with consistency and regularity, you can afford to be a little bit more patient and play it a little slower with the other guy. You can resign yourself to, hey, you know what, right now, Watson don't have quite the chemistry. He missed so much time during training camp. He's been banged up to start the year. He can be the fly sweep and bubble screen guy, and he can be the jet motion, orbit motion guy for now. We can bring him along a little bit more slowly because we do have Dobbs here, who is already making plays, who is already making an impact. And I think this is pretty impressive. This was tallied up by Zach Cruz of the Packers Wire. Matt, for all the different things he said, a ton of potential. He's not even close to his ceiling. He can play the Z, he can play the X, he can play the F, knows the concepts, cares about the game, gives great effort. That's something that Aaron Rodgers mentioned as well when talking about the rookies. I believe it was before or just after the week 2 game. They care. They want to impress. They want to make an impact. That is really high praise and a lot of praise being heaped on a guy who you obviously are expecting a lot from, but who hasn't had a whole lot of major experience to this point. You could have very easily, if you're Matt LaFleur there, said, yeah, he's done a lot of nice things and we're just starting to bring him along and we expect big things from him. No, he was very specific. Hey, he can play these 3 different roles in the offense. He's really good with his body. He's good with this mobility, all these different things. The fact that they are hyping him up like that and are being specific and intentional about it, I think indicates that his role in the instant future or the immediate future is going to continue to grow. And if that is the case, especially without Watkins, who seemed to have some sort of relationship with Aaron Rodgers, some sort of chemistry there, at least in the game against Chicago. No one had any chemistry. Nothing was going right in week 1. But in the game against Chicago, Watkins made an impact. He was toasting guys late in the game in that one. If you have that little bit of chemistry, you obviously have something with Lazard and Cobb. You obviously have the pass catching options out of the backfield. Big Bob Tunyon looks like he's getting back in full form over the last couple of weeks. You throw Romeo Doubs in there, all of a sudden you might not have a ton of star power at the skill positions, Matt, but you've got a bunch of guys who can impact the game in a lot of ways. And that goes back to something we talked about last season, how, hey, Lazard's your big body. And when Tunyon got hurt, he was essentially your tight end, or at least your most effective pass catching tight end. You had the running backs who can do their thing. MVS was your speed guy at the time. You don't have that Mr. Do Everything Devontae, who is incredible anymore, but you do have a lot of different guys who can do a lot of different things. And if you trust the scheme and you trust the game plan, you can rely on that to win you games and to do enough for your offense. And at least to me, and you can tell me if I'm reading too much into this, but at least to me, that kind of praise and that kind of specific praise leads me to believe, yes, they think Romeo Doubs is going to contribute and they think he's going to contribute as soon as possible.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I omitted Sammy Watkins the entire time I was going on the Doubs train there. And the fact that Sammy Watkins is out for 4 weeks sucks. Whatever, he'll come back when he can. But I think the big thing is just like he can play all these positions being Romeo Doubs, right? Like you don't have to worry about him. I mean, that's what the Packers look for all their players, right? We know they want to be versatile, whether it's a secondary guy, offensive lineman, defensive, whatever. But the fact that he can, as a rookie, learn the playbook for a specific position, then also be able to do all the positions that a pass catcher is relied upon in an Aaron Rodgers offense, I think is huge. And he's going to be able to be thrust into any situation. Sammy Watkins comes back. Oh, shit. Lazard's banged up. You got to play him in a different spot. And like they all have different abilities that they have. And I think at the end of the day, Romeo Doubs I think it was a huge progression game for him. He knows he can do it now. He's done it in a real game. He did it up against a top end team. And I think it's just it should be some confidence to build off of as we get into this like weird part of the season. Like we've already talked about, some lower caliber teams where they can kind of make some strides with all 3 different phases of the game.
Let's get to the matchup for the Packers coming up in week 4, Matt. Packers taking on the New England Patriots. And this is a Patriots team that I was not high on at all going into the year because I didn't think they had done enough to make market improvements. And I'm not a Mac Jones guy. I'm just not. I think he's okay. I think if he hits his ceiling in the NFL, he's Kirk Cousins. And if not, he's like an okay starter who probably isn't super long for the league. I mean, I just don't really see it with him. I think there were a lot of advanced numbers last year that would indicate, yeah, this guy's probably not quite as good as he's getting hyped up to be. Steve Young went on national television on ESPN and said Patrick Mahomes could use to watch some Mac Jones tape. Get the hell out of here. Like, that's the dumbest shit in the whole world to make that kind of claim. He's okay. He's a dink and dunk guy who Bill Belichick doesn't trust. And I'll get to a point because I know he's not going to play in this game. But like last year in the blizzard, we all remember when the Patriots threw the ball 3 times in that game against the Bills in that terrible weather. I think that game was in New England. It might have been in Buffalo. It's going to be bad weather up there in the winter no matter what. Like if you trust your quarterback, you're going to let him throw more than 3 times. Rodgers even said that when he talked with Pat McAfee after that game last year on the McAfee show. He said, yeah, there's no way I would have done that. I feel like I would have the trust to get that done. So you already are working with a group that's not wildly talented, starting with the quarterback. And you said it earlier in the show tonight, their pass catchers are okay, but they're not great. I mean, if Jacoby Myers is healthy enough to go, he's an okay piece. Nelson Aguilar, we know the story of Nelson Aguilar and the fact that he can break off big plays. He could also drop the easiest pass in the world. Their tight end situation is not especially good. Their offensive line has taken a massive step back since Dante Scarnecchia retired. Their defense is fine. I mean, it's a good defensive unit, and Bill Belichick's units always are going to be. But you throw all those things together, and then it looks like Brian Hoyer is going to be your starting quarterback because Mac Jones has some sort of severe high ankle sprain. I don't know, man. I don't want to say this is going to be an easy win. I don't want to write this one off because it is Bill Belichick on the other sideline, and you know he is going to have something schemed up. But I didn't even get to the fact that Joe Judge and Matt Patricia are calling the plays and working on the offense for this team. I have a hard time seeing the path to a Patriots victory, whereas I have a much easier and clearer view of what it will take for the Packers to win this game. And I don't feel like it will take any special kind of effort from the Packers to get it done.
No, I think you're right. And I've been trying to decipher just I think like a lot of people have between the Tom Brady's influence on the New England Patriots versus the Bill Belichick influence on the Patriots. Still tough to say apples to apples because Tom goes to a great situation now with the Bucs. Obviously, you take out a star-studded Super Bowl winning MVP quarterback from a team, there's going to be some ebbs and flows there. They also lose, Rob Gronkowski. I thought last year was where expectation should have been if you're a Patriot fan. Very decent season from Mac Jones. You saw some progression, but this year to start, like you mentioned, they didn't really place a lot of the assets. One that comes to mind, J.C. Jackson, didn't go out and replace him in any capacity from my memory. So they're just they're still kind of like limping along post-Brady era. You'd think you'd want to go out and get some guys. They added to the receiver room slightly, Devontae Parker. They just have a hodgepodge of humans that are catching passes from Mac Jones. I also agree with you. I don't see him being a top-end caliber dude in this league. Maybe if they get some guys around him, they're just in a weird spot. Like they run the ball. They ran the shit out of the ball yesterday between Damian Harris and Stevenson. I just don't see how the Packers would lose this game. Brian Hoyer coming. Maybe it's a Bailey Zappi game. Maybe, shout out, I believe, Western Kentucky. Like, that's definitely a guy that's, I know, on your radar. So, regardless who's being quarterback there, I just don't see how they're going to – I mean, they could run the snot out of the ball. I think that's exactly what clearly that's what has to be the science experiment would be for Bill Belichick is we're just going to run the ball. We got Stevenson. We got Damian Harris. We have Brian Hoyer who can sustain this game for us, but we're not going to be able to throw the ball downfield because regardless, I mean, I don't see any of those receivers killing the Packers. I really, really don't. Like, unless they get some nasty combination between Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, I just don't see them being able to attack. So if I'm going in, I'm just going to run the snot of the ball and try to take away somewhat of a weakness as what the Packers have been, ranking still pretty low in rushing offense before yesterday's game, or rushing defense. I assume it's improved since yesterday based off of Leonard Fournette not having that big of a game, but I just don't see there's a way we lose. I really don't. It's just this is the first game I think on the paper where I'm actually like, I mean, Bears, I was pretty confident, but you're still coming off that Minnesota game, and it's still a divisional game. Like, you don't really know what to expect. Now we've seen the way this team can play through 8 quarters outside of the Vikings game. Like, I think it's pretty solid. So I'm pumped for this game, but you never know. Bill Belichick's a nasty son of a gun. Like, he might scheme up something we don't anticipate.
Yeah, that's the one thing that makes you hold up, right? That, man, it's Belichick over there. It really does feel, though, to me at least, like he's playing NFL on hard mode since Brady left. Like, he's just trying to make the game as difficult as possible. Like drafting Cole Strange with the 29th overall pick, when most of the NFL viewing world said, who the hell is Cole Strange? Well, he played at Chattanooga, and now he is starting on the offensive line for the Patriots in his first rookie season. Like, that's just what Bill Belichick does, and it's kind of a meme or a joke at this point. But I don't know. I just don't really get the vision with this team. And again, if they don't have Mac Jones, they're going to run the ball a bunch, whether it's Zappi or Hoyer. I think it'll probably be Hoyer, although I'd love to see Zappi because I really enjoyed him in college. I fired off a joke on Twitter. I don't know if I deleted it or kept it up or not, but at the draft saying Bailey Zappi is going to be a better NFL quarterback than Mac Jones. I will have to go dig through the archive, see if I can find that one. I might have deleted it if I thought it was too hot to handle, but they're going to run the ball a lot. Can you stop the run in this game? Are you going to get a good game from Quay Walker? Can he kind of have his coming out party? Can Devondre Campbell make some sure-handed tackles? If you can, I think that's probably going to be enough to win this game. I trust that the offense is going to do enough. Again, it's a good defense, but it's nothing that makes me think, oh my God, this team is overwhelming at this point. It's not like that team, I believe it was the final year for Brady in New England when they had that incredible defense. I think that was the 2019 season. This isn't anything like that. They're good. They're not overwhelming like that. So I think the offense will do enough. I think it'll be another fairly low-scoring game, but I think that's mostly going to be because I don't see a whole lot of ways for the Patriots to score a lot of points. By the way, before we get to significant to some, can you name the school Bailey Zappi went to before Western Kentucky?
Oh, they've talked about it. I don't think that's actually that crazy of a take, by the way, Bailey Zappi versus Mac Jones.
Got an arm?
The athleticism and I think there's a avenue for Bailey Zappi to get involved, and the fact that he's on the Patriots, they've done some weird stuff with guys like him over the years. I'm gonna say, man, I remember seeing it on when he was drafted, because going up to the draft, I honestly had no clue who he was until the week of, and then they did a whole profile when the Patriots selected him. Was he on more than one team even before Western Kentucky, or was it just?
I believe just the one. Just the
one? Okay. The first one that came into my head was Wake Forest. I don't think that's correct, so I'm just throwing that out there, and you can tell me which it is.
Honestly, you're barking up the right tree. Can I interest you in Houston Baptist?
Ah, correct. The old Houston Baptist. Sure.
Which, fun fact, last week changed their name. They're now Houston Christian. They didn't want to be Houston Baptist anymore, so they're Houston Christian now. But that is where Bailey Zappi got his career started, so a little fun fact for you. All right, whether it's Bailey Zappi, whether it's Brian Hoyer, it is going to be Packers versus Patriots coming up on Sunday this week. It's going to be the big game on CBS. Jim Nantz, Tony Romo, Tracy Wolfson, that's your broadcast crew for it coming up on Sunday. 3:25 Lambeau time kickoff. Significant to some, Matt. Let's get the early line. This opened at 9.5 favoring the Packers. It's already up a full point at most major sports books to 10.5. Depending on where you look, the over-under has moved as well. Not to name any names specifically, but it's a certain sports book where there are a lot of kings who like to draft. The over-under right now is at 40. A certain other sports book where fans like to duel, currently 39.5. So the books, the friends in the desert, they are predicting a low-scoring game in this one. Packers heavily favored. Who you got in our early look for Week 4?
I mean, gotta go Packers. Obviously, the reason the line is moving because reports came out today that Mac Jones probably going to be out for a couple games. Even with him in there, 9.5 seems pretty fair. I think it's probably a little heavy for Packers, based 9.5, but it is a home game, so I think whatever. Anyways, it was like you said, 10.5 now. I like the Packers to cover. What did you say the point total was too? I missed that part.
39.5 or 40 looks to be the number. Yeah, low scoring.
I think last week was 42 or 42.5. Wow.
Feels like there's a lot of low-scoring games this year. That feels like the move for a lot of this season.
And there really has been. I'll go under. I'm going to go under. I'm just going to stick because the Packers really haven't scored a crap ton of points thus far. I'm going to say Packers under. So they win by 10.5. We got to go math. 27-10 stomping of the New England Patriots, led by Bailey Zappi or Mac Jones, undecided.
I was also going to say 27-10. That was also the number. I think the Patriots will score. I'm not expecting a shutout in this game, but Packers can score a few touchdowns. I don't see the Patriots scoring all that many points. Again, can you stop the run? That is going to be the one thing in this game. Because, okay, we can put Bailey Zappi in the our guy category now, but if he's out there playing, do we expect anything? If it's old ass Brian Hoyer out there. Do you expect anything? No, Brian Hoyer is the same guy now that he was at Michigan State, that he was when he played for the Browns, or the other 2 times he played for New England before this current time, or when he was in Houston, or any of the other places he's been. He's the same guy he's always been. They don't have dudes who can catch the ball. Their offensive coaching staff is a casserole of nonsense. I mean, I just don't see it with this team. And I know you shouldn't count out a Bill Belichick team, because when you do, that is when they're at their most dangerous. But their roster is and the Packers are, I think, riding some momentum right now. Hopefully we'll get even more Bakhtiari. Maybe some of those receivers get healed up and are more at full strength for this game. You know what? It's not super creative, but I'm going to go with it too. 27-10. I think the Packers win this game. I think they cover. I do like the under because I just don't see the Patriots scoring all that much. I don't know where their points are going to come from against a defense like this. And you can say, well, hey, look at the points they scored against Baltimore. Packers have a better defense than Baltimore does this year. The Packers defense is better than the Ravens, which is crazy to think about, but I really just don't see a ton of points, but plenty for the Packers to get it done. I'm expecting a fun Sunday afternoon, my friend. I think this is going to be a very enjoyable game. I hope it is an enjoyable game anyway. And I know our guy Dan on the Game on Wisconsin YouTube chimed in and said, hey, I love when Tony Romo calls Packers games. I do too. I like the Nance and Romo team. And shout out to Tracy Wolfson. I love to share the story of the time I saw her at the NCAA tournament in 2016 sprint the length of the floor to catch Bill Self for an interview wearing like 5-inch heels. They were massive. Like a third of her entire height was her heels in that game, sprinting, hauling ass across the floor to go catch Bill Self for an interview. I've always been a big Tracy Wolfson fan after seeing that display of athleticism. So I'm excited for the crew, excited for the kickoff time, and I'm excited for this game, man. I think Packers win, and I think we're feeling pretty good 3-1 to start the season.
I'm not going to be shocked if we don't find out who the starting quarterback is for them until about 2:00 on Sunday, based off of because I'm getting big John Holford vibes from Bailey Zappi, the backup that was for the Rams, kind of like little wiry guy that would run around a little bit. Like if they hold their cards to the chest, it might be a little bit tougher to game plan because I think Zapier can move. Brian Hoyer, he's a good game manager at this point, solid backup, but I think that's an interesting dynamic. I don't expect to know who that is. And if they were to release that right away, that's probably pretty telling of what Bailey's progression has been in his first rookie preseason or offseason, season, etc. But it should be a good game. I'm excited. And I have Dan chiming in the YouTube. I apologize for picking the under. That is off brand for me, but I got to kind of correct my wrongs based off the last couple of things I've seen because we're not scoring a ton of points. And at the end of the day, like, overall, games have been lower scoring, and like you said, like we've all said, like it's really just they're not going to be able to score that many points. The Patriots are going to control the ball more, therefore less possessions, and it makes sense. And based off of everything in total, they haven't even exceeded 38 points in any game. So take that for what it's worth when you're betting this weekend.
Yeah, it's kind of gross, but I feel like I've become an under guy after watching the NFL this season. I don't like it, but hey, if it makes me money, I'm going to go for it. We will be excited for this game all week long. Don't forget to check us out on social media. You can find Matt at Matt_FRA_ on Twitter. You can find myself as well at Brendan DZW. Make sure you're following Game on Wisconsin on Twitter at Game on WI. Same handle on Instagram. Find us on Facebook as well. And of course on YouTube. We will be back coming up live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter next Monday night as we get ready for week 5. But first, got to take care of business in week 4. We'll be reacting to it. We can't wait for it. Matt, good show as always. We'll talk to you next Monday.
You betcha, man. Let's have a good week.
Until then, this is for Matt Freilich. I'm Brendan Dworzinski. This has been The Final Dump, brought to you, as always, by Game on Wisconsin.
Well, Wayne, I think this is one that Vince Lombardi and George Hallis would be proud of.
You could have given me a touchdown. Then it's hard to overturn. You know what I mean?
I understand.
That was a good effort, though, wasn't it? It was a pretty good effort.